Going to move on now, so that's presenting what we've done, to move over to Mike Brown in a second to think about options for how you might access the data. And I should emphasize at this stage we're introducing options. We don't necessarily have the resources at the moment to provide the more complicated ones or implement them, but we just want to understand what your needs are, and if you want those, then maybe we can use that as a way of trying to work out how we might get funding. So with that as background, I'll pass you over to Mike, who's going to tell you about options for accessing data. Mike.
Thanks, James. The most often asked question in Zoom, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks very much. So like James pointed out, I think this is the last presentation, and this is also going to be followed by a mural session where we're going to ask you some further questions on what I'm going to present. For those of you not familiar with mural, this is an interactive whiteboard. I can't remember whether there's any chance for any questions, but I presume if they're put in the chat, you can cover them anyway. Yeah, okay, I'm getting a nod from James. Thanks, James. So I'm going to talk to you today briefly about access to the data. I mean, Emma's already pointed out that it's going to be available on the CEDAR archive as download, but 16 terabytes is a fairly hefty data set to download and then manage on your local machine. So I want to talk about different ways that you could actually get hold of the data, and maybe not the full data set, but parts of it. So I'm really just today going to be covering web portals, which probably most of you are familiar with, the data delivery through some form of web system, application programming interfaces, which might be a new term for some of you, but if you think about your mobile phone or mobile device and you've got a weather app and you say, what's the weather like in my area? That is actually an API. So that's going away to the Met Office or wherever, pulling the information down from the Met Office and then pushing that into your browser. So that's what an API is, and we could do all kinds of things with APIs. And then probably another new term for you will be this data labs, these virtual collaborative environments, but I think I'll leave that for a minute while we talk, and I'll talk about that later. But I also just wanted to point out that these aren't mutually exclusive, so you can have, well, I'll cover that as I go through the talk, hopefully. So now I'm going to actually go to a live system, which is a bit stupid of me, but it's something that we're developing. For a sister project of this, this is atmospheric model data, and we've been working with the community to kind of how we would present the data in a number of ways to different kind of stakeholders. So this grouping that I used in the first slide, this Data Labs Data API, and in this case that's EIDC, that's UK-SCAPE's data center, but we could easily just replace that with CEDAR. And CEDAR is just a NERC data center. So the idea behind this is kind of a launch page. So we wanted to give you some feeling for the data that you're actually going to be looking at or wanting to access. So we have got this kind of exploration visualization part of the page where you can, I hope you can see this. So this is live. This is currently in development. So you can step through the UK maps, the time series that this model's produced. You can have a look at different variables and step through them in time. I hope you can see there is some change going on. Yep, I'm getting nods again. And then you can look at individual outputs from the model, dry deposition, oxidized nitrogen. So again, it just gives you a quick visual look at the data that you might be of interest to. You could see it over a year, you could see it over 6 months, you can add further variables and it'll map them all together. And then of course, if you wanted to, you can also change the location, map-based change location, zoom into different areas of interest. So this was the idea behind this is, you know, you get a feel for the data before you then go and say, oh, actually, I want some of that. And if you wanted some of that and another system that's live, you could then, I noticed on the Menti, spatial cookie cutting was selected by quite a few of you. So this is a spatial cookie cutter. You can draw a boundary on the map, select it, excuse me. Is that, so draw a boundary on the map, select that area, you can zoom in and out, submit that, agree to the license, take you away to a place where you can click on a download and download that particular area. You could also select from regions. In this case, we've just got counties of England and Wales, but you could add additional regions, or like Emma said, you can just go straight to the CEDAR archive and get the whole data set and wait about 6 months probably if you've got a slow internet connection to download 16 terabytes. So that's the kind of thing. There's nothing in here about time slices, etc., but we could easily build those in. And this actually is a live system on EIDC, but the portal is still under development. We could do similar things. So back to the slides. I talked about APIs, and like I said, these are, it stands for a programmatic interface. So you could use your favorite programming language, R and Python, if you've got an API exposed around the data. It's dynamic access. It's all about dynamic access to the data. And it does avoid, you can then, depending on how the API is configured, you can query the API for different variables. You could query it for different RCPs, for bias correction, and then part of the data down. It does mean, of course, that you don't have to worry about versioning or manage. You're getting the latest version of the data set all the time. One of the things that a lot of people are interested in around APIs, and I've talked about this this weather app, is it makes it easy to build your own custom applications. So that portal I just showed you with the data and the map, that is actually built on an API. So I've built a web application on top of an API to display that data, and you could easily do that if that's the way you wanted to go for your own company. It gives basically, it means that you can stream data in from different sources. So you could have sensor data, you could have data coming in from UK-SCAPE, you could have all kinds of things and bring them into the application, and it makes provenance and reproducibility a lot simpler. The next slide is about, it's just to get some thoughts from you really about what you, if APIs are interested, this will be part of the mural board, the interactive whiteboard after this session, is what you would want to do, what you want to get from an API. So these are just to get kind of the juices flowing. You might just want access to the values. You might want it in different formats if you're not happy with NetCDF. You might want information about the data quality, which is always important, and functions that you might want to do. And you covered some of these on the Menti questions. You might want point extraction. You might want to drill down through a time series for individual points and extract that. You might want aerial averaging over areas, or you might just want climate ensemble. So it's kind of just getting an idea of what you want from the API itself, or like I said, it's not mutually exclusive because the API, the portal's built on an API. What you want from the portal. So the second to last slide is this concept of virtual data labs. In Emma's talk, she said that the data is on the CEDAR archive, and then she also mentioned this thing called Jasmine. And Jasmine is NERC's private cloud. It is a cloud-based infrastructure, much like Amazon or Azure. There's a lot of storage capability, but also a lot of compute capability. So it would be nice if the UK-SCAPE data was sitting there, and we could provide tools for you within that cloud environment for you to manipulate, analyze, and just basically play around with that data set and pull other data sets that are available on the CEDAR archive as well. So with that in mind, I have been leading a development activity called this Virtual Data Labs. So this is a collaborative environment based on this cloud infrastructure that NERC provides, but we've also made it portable. So if you wanted to take that this software infrastructure and host it somewhere else, either on a public cloud or on your own systems, you could do. It's web-based, which means that you access it through a web browser. It has access and authentication, so if you wanted to keep things private, you could do. It encourages multidisciplinary science because you can bring in collaborators. You're not working alone on your own laptop, you're working within a shared environment. And it's notebook based, and these might be familiar to some of you. This is notebooks based on Jupyter Labs, or if you're used to using R in RStudio, for instance, then we provide RStudio as part of this platform. So if you're using RStudio on your laptop, you can only use that individually. If you're using RStudio in the virtual data labs, you can collaborate with your colleagues and do things together. And because it's cloud-based, you get access to the big data store. So 16 terabytes of Chesscape is available there with an API sitting there so you can query it. And you get access, if you want to do some big number crunching, you've got access to big compute as well. And from our perspective, especially in this area of open science, it does promote open science, it promotes reproducibility, and it also, getting back to this, you have different stakeholders interact different data. We provide tools such as RShiny within this environment, so you can, which is a web framework for people who are using R. So you can put things like this graph on the right-hand side at the bottom. You can put graphing tools or visualization tools on top of the data, so people can then come and have a look at the outputs of your research within that collaborative environment. And the final slide is just a summary of what we can do. If you have lots of money, we can build anything really. It's up to you. So we provide easier access to data, these analytical tools and infrastructure through this virtual collaborative environment on a cloud-based infrastructure, on your local infrastructure, to access and exploit this big data, explore relationships at a finer resolution, and for instance, investigate model scenarios and implications. And that, I think, after a very, very quick run through some techie stuff, is where we are. Thank you very much for your attention.